Welcome, everyone, to the third episode of the Elevated Platicas podcast. My name is Romeo Nava. I am your co-host of the show.
And I'm Yesenia Nava, your other host.
And this week, as you can see, we are doing our episode virtually. So each of us are at home. We are just both so busy, but we want to continue to do episodes. So we figured some of these can be virtual so that we can just continue to do more episodes.
hmm
And yeah, with that, I'll pass it to you, Isa, so you can just share what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, we've both been really busy. So, we're trying to really prioritize this time, but it's just been hard taking that time sometimes with how busy life gets. So we are doing it virtually, but I think it's fitting that we definitely just share some of the things that we've been going through, just to be real and vulnerable. And I'm sure other people will be able to relate. But I mean, I could start with myself. Life has been really busy with the kids. My oldest is going to be 4 soon, and my youngest is going to be 2 in September. So there's just like a lot of things that have come up, especially with my oldest, like thinking about school soon. Really, we were looking at what the schools are like here in our area. And, ideally, we just would want to be in a different city, more towards the suburbs, just because mainly it's safety. Like for me, I will say it's safety, and schools. Those are the two very important things for our family. And we don't feel that 100% where we're at right now. So it's like, okay, how do we move to then another suburb where we really like? But then it's like taxes are really high, that's why it's safer and there's better schools and things like that. It's been just a challenge just thinking about all of that, like taking all of that on. So yeah, it's just been on my mind on top of everything else that we have going on. So sometimes I get to this point of like, how can we get ahead? Like how can I get ahead? It's like I want to work. That's how I'll make more money, but I can't just get up and start working because my kids are not in school, they're not in daycare, none of that. And I also don't want to work just to pay for childcare, especially for my little one. Mateo, my oldest, I can put him in school and things like that. But even then, still, like as I'm learning through other friends that have kids in schools, they're like, they only do half day and all of these things, or they have like all these different times for when they go into school versus when they leave school. So I'm like, so how do people like actually like work, It's not like school's 9 to 5, at least right now with the little ones, So it's just like a lot of moving parts that just get so overwhelming for me sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's where the work environment hasn't really caught up with the intricacies of having a family today. Like you said,
hmm
with the traditional schedule, the traditional work week, I think some jobs have adapted a little bit better,
hmm
where you can have a little bit more flexible schedule and you can sort of work when you have time. Thankfully,
hmm
my job is pretty flexible, so I do have
Yeah.
sort of that traditional time frame, but I do make time to go along with Monica and Romito if they go to a class or something.
hmm
I can make time to kind of do that. And thankfully, I'm not having to stay late either to make up that time. So as long as I'm getting my work done, I feel that that's the most important thing. But obviously, I would say the majority of jobs out there aren't that way. You
hmm
have your traditional schedule. Obviously, most people work weekends and things like that, so it makes it a lot harder to have a realistic schedule where you can take care of your kids and work.
hmm
So that on top of so many other things, I think is making it very hard for families today, especially if both parents want to work.
hmm
So yeah. Um, Yeah, and so for me, I just recently joined a program for real estate investors. So I've been doing that program. It's for 7 weeks. So I've been having classes every Saturday from like 9 a.m. till about like 2 p.m.
hmm
So that, is taking up now my Saturdays, which should end at the end of May. But
Oh,
outside of
nice.
that, I've obviously been spending time like going to see houses and trying to find properties. So I'm trying to find like time during the day or I'm going in the evening to go see houses because, again, I'm also trying to get ahead. I'm
hmm
trying to find time to look at properties and possibly find something. So that's been going on, and then there's a situation with Monica's parents that we're trying to help them with, which also involves potentially selling their house and having to buy another one, And so I'm trying to help them with that as well. And then I just recently activated my real estate license. So I got
That's
licensed
awesome.
in I got licensed in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
but at the time I was working at Chase. So I found out that it was a conflict of interest for me to actually work as an agent. So I didn't end up doing anything with it at that time. But
Mm-hmm.
once I joined this program, I was like, okay, now I can really put it to use.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went ahead and activated my license, and so now I can actually obviously do my own transactions. I can write my own offers and all of that. So I think as an investor, that is just a great tool to have for me, so that I don't have to rely on other people to be showing me properties or putting offers in for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to give me a leg up. But obviously, I'm trying to have to learn how to be an agent as well, on top of how to be a real estate investor. So I'm having
Mm-hmm.
to learn all of these things at once. So yeah, it's a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
also I'm trying to help other people, potentially help you guys with your situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do feel like sometimes I put too much pressure on myself where I feel like I'm trying to get ahead, but I'm also trying to help Monica's parents. I'm trying to help you guys. I want everyone to get ahead, but
Yeah.
obviously I'm only one person.
Yeah. And you still got a
But
full-time job too.
yeah, and I have a full-time job, and
And
I
you're a
have
dad.
obviously I'm a dad, yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I truly take pride in being present as much as possible. So
Mm-hmm.
it is very hard because I have a lot of guilt, when I'm making those decisions. Like, do I go spend time on trying to find a deal, look at properties, whatever it might be, or
Mm-hmm.
do I spend time with my son? Because I know ultimately, like, spending time learning the real estate and stuff is going to get me ahead in the future.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to pay off to where hopefully at some point I can quit my job and potentially have more time with Romito.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that trade-off, like sacrificing some time now so that in the future I can be more present.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the back of my mind, I understand like I might be making that sacrifice right now to
Mm-hmm.
potentially have more time in the future, but it's still hard,
Yeah.
especially right now because he's in those young years where they're just developing so quickly and they're changing so quickly
Mm-hmm.
at this time period. So it's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what's been going on with me. So I feel like I'm at a point where I'm really just ready to dive into being an investor,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I can. And
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, my goal is to quit my job. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of tired of feeling scared. I'm tired of feeling like an imposter. All that internal voice that's telling you to just stay where you are, stay with the safe thing, don't take risks.
Mm-hmm.
All those internal thoughts that you have that are potentially holding you back. I'm tired
Mm-hmm.
of just kind of letting those things hold me back. So I'm ready to just really jump in and just go all in, because
Mm-hmm.
I have spent a lot of money on this program. And honestly, that has been what's been stressing me out a lot because it's adding to our debt. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if I don't just go for it, like I'm just going to continue to spin my wheels. So I rather kind of be stressed about going for it than just sitting still and knowing like I'm not really going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, it's when you're talking about how you feel and like the guilt and all that, it's like I can relate to it so much. And I'm sure it's a cultural thing. I'm sure it's, we grew up in the same household essentially too. So a lot of those influences also come in. But then like I hear you talk about it and then I'm like, I have so much more empathy for others than I do for myself. And that's something that I'm working on. But because I feel that guilt too, it's like constant for whatever, even though I'm doing so much. But even just like listening to you, like you're doing so much for your family, and so is Monica. And but like from your end, like I hope that you don't feel as guilty because I mean I think you're a really present dad, like you're very present, you are very intentional also all the time when I see you with Romito. So I mean even you just choosing to take that time that you are able to throughout the day to be there for your son's classes and stuff. I'm like, that's so awesome, because like my husband doesn't really get that chance, I mean, he really
Yeah,
is busy, and he
yeah,
works in IT. So there are times where he does need to be in the office and there is not really a flexibility with that because he's literally in charge of this whole headquartered office, like as far as the IT goes. So it's a lot, to be like, okay, I have to really just do this on my own. There's days when
yeah,
I've been sick and I'm like, he's got to go into the office. Like there's no flexibility on that. So it's hard, like you said, because it's like you're really just trying to do it all, but you also don't want to feel guilty. You're like fighting those feelings, and your son's just gonna see you and like just be. He's not gonna think of the time that you didn't spend with him. He's gonna think of those times that you did, but also like look up to you and be like, man, my dad was always like grinding, or he's an inspiration to me and things like that. So I think that's what's awesome about having kids too, is we get the opportunity to really show them who we are so that they can be inspired by that, and build off of that hopefully. But and I was also gonna say about like you just going for it, and the imposter syndrome is what I wanted to bring up, because I read an article once about a different perspective looking at imposter syndrome. More like it's not really imposter syndrome that we're feeling, but more like we're going into these new spaces because we're the first ones to be in there, or
Hmm.
sometimes like the only ones, that
Yeah.
it feels like we're imposters, but we're really not. It's
Yeah.
really just an unknown world, like our
Yeah.
parents are not in those spaces, so it's
Hmm.
like we're going into them and feeling these imposter syndromes, but really it's no, we're just the first ones to be here and it looks a little different. So I need to
Yeah.
adjust and I need to learn, but I'm not an imposter. I'm exactly where I need to be. And I
Hmm.
can see how you feel that, because you definitely like go for it. That's what I admire about you, is like you're not afraid to try. I'm more like reserved, like, hey, let me think about this and then maybe I'll try it. But you're like, nah, I'm not gonna wait. I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna do it. And I admire that
Yeah.
so much, because you push through those limits that are put on us, those limits that we learn growing up. Just
Yeah.
because we're Latinos, even with everything that's going on now in our country, it's really hard to kind of really rise above that sometimes, when it's just so loud.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's where working on my mindset and my mentality has really helped me, because I'm able to reframe things a lot more quickly
Mhm.
when I do feel like that imposter syndrome, because really that's just your inner voice, right? And it just comes out automatically. It's not like a conscious
Mhm.
thought that you're having. But
Yeah.
like you said, for me, the way I think about it is when I have those thoughts, to me, it just tells me like I'm feeling this way because I'm starting to become something else, and I'm sort of getting rid of what I don't want to be, which is I don't want to be a person who just works 40 hours a week. I don't want to be someone who just works for a living. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be someone who builds their own business, someone who works for themselves.
Mhm.
And like you said, as Latinos, we don't really have that example. We often don't really have those role models because we are the first ones doing that in our family. So there's
Mhm.
nothing that we can look to say, okay, this is the example that I have. This is what it looks like. So that's why I feel so uncomfortable, because we have nothing to point to,
Mhm.
and we can say, okay, like there's the example. So
Mhm.
that's why I think it feels so uncomfortable, because we don't know what it looks like. We're doing it
Mhm.
on the fly and we're trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
And that's why it feels uncomfortable, because everything we know is, work hard, save your money, don't take risks. And so obviously, like I said, you're doing something very different from that. And that's why it does feel so uncomfortable. But like I said, for me, that just means that I am growing and
Mhm.
I'm trying to reach a new level of growth. And that's why it's uncomfortable, because obviously, when you're trying to learn, you're going to feel like you don't know anything, and you're going to feel like you're in the wrong place or doing the wrong thing. But
Mhm.
those are those moments that you just have to push through. And obviously, like I said, that's what breeds growth.
Mhm. Yeah. I think also a different perspective, because I definitely agree with you, is I think even as a parent, specifically, I'm talking from a mom's perspective, like truly trying to break those cycles. I feel
Hmm.
like parenthood is already hard enough because you don't really get handed this handbook of like how to do it and things like that. You kind of think like, okay, well, what's your examples? The close people around you and who you want to be more like, or maybe there's some characteristics or things that you don't want to be like, that you're
Yeah.
around. So I think even just being a parent, sometimes you can feel that imposter syndrome. Like, am I doing this right? Or maybe you're in spaces with other parents and you're like, wait, they're doing this, I'm not doing this. And maybe that's not everybody's mind, but it's definitely my mind. Like
Hmm.
I've shared before that I have a lot of anxiety, so that's literally my brain constantly. And I've learned through therapy after like kind of revisiting that part of myself and really recognizing like where does that come from? It's definitely from my childhood, you know. I was the oldest and I was expected to like set an example, and I also had a lot of responsibility at a very young age. I
Yeah.
basically had to parent you, you know. We
Hmm.
were, you know, we grew up with a single mother, so she was working and, you know, we were home. And even though we were old enough to be home and all that, it's like you know, mommy always like told me like, hey, make sure, you know, that you're doing your homework, make sure this, make sure that. So, and I'm sure a lot of people in single parent households can really relate to that, you know. So as the oldest,
Hmm.
I took on a lot of responsibility. So I constantly was like, am I doing this right? I don't know. Like, so I think the anxiety stems from that. And it's just like constant things that I have to like work through in my mind, you know, and like I have to really come back to myself. And I do want to share like and bring up cannabis because like cannabis really helps me with that. It helps me to center myself and like really feel the feelings, but also tell myself like you're doing fine. Like everything is
Hmm.
fine. You don't need to listen to all of the noise happening in your head. Like, just try to connect with yourself and what are your true instincts? Like what is this telling you? And I'm always
Hmm.
like I always have those like two-way conversations too with myself because it helps. But then I like come into this place of like it's fine, you know, I'm going to have these doubts and things like that, but I don't have to sit with it, you know, I know that I'm doing a great job, but it's
Hmm.
like you just always want to do more, you know, you always want to do
Yeah.
more, you always want to push, and you always want the best for your family. So it's also like finding that balance. So for me, it's also, it maybe looks different than yours because you're the dad and you're the main financial responsible one in your family. And I'm the opposite, you know,
Yeah.
I'm the stay-at-home mom, and you know, Erin is the more financial responsible one, but I'm also the kids, the home responsible one, all of that. So while it can overwhelm me, and I always want things to be in a greater place, like maybe I want the house to be cleaner, or maybe I want this or whatever, and I put that pressure on myself, you know, and it's like
Yeah.
I can't just put that all on myself, you know, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where the pressure and the stress and everything that comes with being a parent and having a family is very different as, the mom or the dad,
Mhm.
or even just, the person who earns the money and the person who stays home, whoever that might be. It can be
Mhm.
very different. And if you're not communicating, there can be a big disconnect.
Mhm.
And, so like for me, that is what I would say, that's like my eternal flaw, is like the amount of expectations and pressure that I put on myself.
Mhm.
And just, it's like a double-edged sword because that's what has gotten me to where I am today.
Mhm.
But it's also what tends to like stress me out and cause, just unnecessary stress and all of that. So
Mhm.
because I am just so constantly focused on my vision of the future,
Mhm.
that's always in the back of my mind. Like I can always see what that vision looks like, right? And what our life looks like in that future.
Mhm.
That it's hard to step back from that and be, one, like appreciative of where I am, and
Mhm.
also give myself credit for where I have gotten to already,
Mhm.
and be able to have that moment to sort of take a step back and say, it's great to be focused on the future and stay motivated and be hungry,
Mhm.
but you also need to find that space to be grateful for what you do have and give yourself credit for what you have done. So I think that's one of the hardest things for me.
Mhm.
Like you said, I am doing so much. I mean, not only am I trying to build my own, business and trying to help others, I'm trying to get in better shape. So I'm waking up at 6:30, going to the gym,
Mhm.
obviously working a full-time job. During that, I'm trying to, find real estate properties that I can invest in. I'm also trying to be present with my son. We're also starting our garden, so I'm like building things for that. Um, I'm learning how to become a realtor, and I'm learning more about becoming an investor. We're doing the podcast, so many
Mhm.
things. And someone on the outside looking in would be like, how is it you think you're not doing enough,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just my mindset,
That's what I'm
I'm
thinking.
like,
I'm like, damn, you're doing all this stuff.
but that's my mindset, I'm just
Yeah.
like, how can I squeeze every ounce of what I
Yeah.
have? Because I just I guess I just don't want to look back and regret like, hey, I really could have, just spent more time or grinded a little bit harder and it would have paid off in the future.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something that I need to work on because
Hmm.
it could be coming out of like fear that in the future I'll look back and say, hey, had I spent more time or worked harder or whatever,
Hmm.
maybe I could be in this place or whatever. So it's yeah, it's just hard to balance that. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword because it does push me and keep me motivated, but it can
Hmm.
also be a detriment, and it can cause additional stress that is unnecessary. It's,
Hmm.
it's hard, but I think I'm glad that I am like that because that just
Hmm.
means I have to just learn how to control that and balance
Hmm.
it. I have to, and that's where my meditation comes in. That's where my gratitude practice comes in because that's sort of what grounds me.
Hmm.
And then I'm able to stay motivated and put that expectation on myself while still being able to stay grounded and say, hey, look at what I've done. Look at the life I have. I'm grateful for what I have. Now let's
Hmm.
go out and let's grind and let's keep building.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're definitely doing a lot. Never, never question that. Definitely. And you're
Yeah.
inspiring all of us in the family. You know what I mean? Because you're the first one really doing all this. So, yeah. But I get you. I get how it could be that way for you. And I think for me as a mom, like, it's similar in a way, but it literally is just a lot about the kids. It's like,
Hmm.
am I doing the right thing? Especially as a stay-at-home mom, like, that is my job.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was working before I had the kids, I was always a top performer because I was really working that hard. I was working hard and
Hmm.
I would try to be a perfectionist, try to be the best, you know, person on the team and things like that because it just also fueled me. I wanted to get those promotions or I wanted to, further advance my skill set, and I wanted to just try to do it as quickly as I could, especially knowing
Yeah.
that I also wanted a family and I
Hmm.
also knew the type of comfortability that I wanted in my family,
Yeah.
or with my family. So I think now just like not having that work part has been hard because I've been so
Yeah.
used to it and you get a lot of gratification. I was
Hmm.
talking to I believe this was a conversation in therapy, but just like the first gratification when you're working is a paycheck, like
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not that I don't have money because that's not how our family works. It's not like, oh, Aaron's money, it's our money.
Hmm.
But it's just different. It's different
Yeah.
when you're working, you get that paycheck, you're like, all right, right, you get that promotion. Or even when you get reviews or just positive feedback, you don't necessarily hear that all the time as a mom. And it can
Hmm.
be hard, you can get lost in your thoughts. And then also
Yeah.
for me, it's been like kind of redirection, like where can I get that gratification? It's in the way that my kids smile at me. It's in the way
Hmm.
that they play with me and things like that. So that's helped me. It's just kind of trying to reframe my mind, but I do get in my mind a lot about it. I obsess over things, or if I can't keep the house clean, I obsess over it, and then I'm just like frantically just trying to
Hmm.
do stuff. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I want to be present with my kids. So it's like, what is it going to be? Is it just going to be that the kitchen's going to be dirty for like 2 days?
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to be like, you know what? Who cares? I'm just going to be with the kids. Or
Yeah.
just get a break too? Because that's the thing too, is like, it's been guilt about that, but it's like, okay, where do you come in now? I keep forgetting about myself. So now it's been a new thing for me to be like, the kitchen's going to be dirty for 2 days and it is what it is. It's fine. And
Hmm.
I'm going to take a day for myself or whatever.
Yeah.
So Aaron and I have been like really working on that recently. Like he will go do his thing, like he goes and trains, he goes and plays
Hmm.
soccer, that's his thing. And then I'm starting to find things for myself to do. And him
Yeah.
doing it is kind of motivating me because I'm like, well, now I'm with the kids longer because he's doing his thing. I better
Yeah.
ask for my time too, and actually do it for myself. So
Hmm.
that's how it's kind of helped me.
Yeah. And I think going back to what you said, like having that gratification and that feedback when you do go to work, having like those
Mhm.
reviews, I think it's okay to need that, even as a mom.
Mhm.
I think how can you find a way to still get that? And I think, like you said, you self-reflect a lot. So maybe it
Mhm.
looks like sitting down every month and saying, okay, what did I accomplish this month? And it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be tangible because I
Yeah.
think as parents, there's a lot of things that aren't tangible, like
Mhm.
being present. That's not tangible. That's not something that you can measure, but it is immeasurable to your kids.
Mhm.
So I think it's hard when we are looking at, well, I didn't get anything done. Like, I
Mhm.
think as Latinos, we do have that mentality a lot because
Mhm.
we're just used to like work hard. You always got to be doing something. Like, I think I see that in a lot of us. Like, it's hard for us to just like sit down and relax. We feel like, no, we have to be doing something. Like, what can I be doing? That's how I feel a lot of the times. So I
Mhm.
think, maybe finding a way to give that to yourself, or even if it's a sit down with Aaron and say, okay, like, what do you think I did well this month? Like, was it some activities for the kids or just taking care of the house or, I mean, just
Mhm.
making it through the week that you were sick, whatever it might be, so that you can really reflect and be like, hey, look, I am doing a great job. Because I
Mhm.
think it is easy to say, like, well, I haven't got anything done. Like, the house is a mess, the laundry's not done,
Mhm.
whatever it might be. I think it's easy to fall into that. I think
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we are so self-critical that we're like, well, to, I shouldn't need someone to tell me like, oh, hey, you're doing a great job, or I shouldn't need this. If that's what you need, that's what you need. That's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, maybe look for a way to still get that, like, because that is your job. Being your mom is a job. So
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
should still feel like that sort of feedback and that same sort of gratification because it's honestly the most important job that you can be doing.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
going to a company and working for somebody, I mean,
Yeah.
anybody can do that. I mean, it's much more impactful and valuable to do the job of a mom, not only just do it, but really put your all into it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely valid. I will be honest and say that Aaron doesn't have a strong suit in that. It's just like, um, how would you call it? Like showing that type of affection, like words of affirmation. He
Hmm.
doesn't really, it's not that something he struggles with. It's just like he didn't really see that a lot growing up.
Yeah.
So, and that's also a different thing for me because for a long time in our relationship, it would be like I didn't get those words of affirmation and I always wanted them as a kid.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I was always searching for them. I was always like, again, I was the oldest. So I was always trying to be the well-behaved one or the well-impressed because that's what I was taught to be. So I think,
Yeah.
of course, all that spills into your adulthood and then into your relationship. So for a long time, I was just so upset that he wouldn't validate me a lot, Aaron. And then I learned through couples therapy, through individual therapy, that he is validating me. He's just validating in the way that he thinks that he is validating me. And then it's just like,
Hmm.
okay, then we have to communicate. And like, while I have been very expressive, like, hey, it does help when you're like, hey, thank you for doing this or whatever. Or
Yeah.
like you said, you did great with this. It's really, I had to also learn like he can only do so much and meet me in the middle, but then I have
Hmm.
to also do work as well too to
Yeah.
feel like, why do I always need that external validation?
Hmm.
Like, how can I give that to myself? Because I don't give it to myself. I look for it externally before I give
Yeah.
it to myself. It's almost like I need someone else to tell me that I'm doing a good job for me to believe it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's the accountability that I had to take with my relationship. And I'm working on it. Because obviously
Yeah.
motherhood is like something so new too and so different that it's like, it's going to take some time. But I think I'm doing good. Like overall, I have this feeling of, I know I'm doing a great job. I know
Hmm.
that I am. I know I
Yeah.
work really hard to be a good mom and I know that I'm a good mom. So, and also I think the main reason because of that is because I just keep evolving as a parent, as a person, and I'm not going to stop. I take
Hmm.
accountability. There's times where I make a mistake with the kids. And now that Mateo is starting to understand a little bit more, I will have conversations with him and even apologize sometimes if I yell, if I do whatever, because
Yeah.
I realize in that moment that it's not about him, it's about me, you
Hmm.
know? And that's been huge in my parenthood journey is like really being able to see the situation for what it is, being able to see my sons for who they are, and really
Hmm.
trying to look back at myself and see like what accountability can I also take so that I can grow too and things can be easier for me too because they will
Hmm.
be. So it's been a lot of that too in the healing part because I don't want to rely so much on others. I always have for
Hmm.
validation, like I said, for love. And yes, we all need others. We all need a community, but I think sometimes we get too stuck on our traumas from our childhood and we're trying to fill that gap that we just unfortunately will never be able to fully
Hmm.
close. But there's ways to move on and there's ways to like reframe things and there's ways to still feel so much fulfillment.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I think what makes it harder nowadays is social media, unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah.
as a mom, it's very easy to get on social media. You see these other moms, they're making stuff from scratch or
Hmm.
whatever, they have this what looks like dream life and they look like the perfect mom. And it's very easy to fall into comparison, just feel like, well, how is she doing it? And I'm over here like just barely surviving. So it can be very easy to fall into that, especially nowadays.
Hmm.
So I think
Hmm.
that definitely makes it even harder nowadays. It's very easy to fall into comparison.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that just takes, you gotta just have some boundaries around that if you see that it's affecting you negatively.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's what I appreciate about Monica so much as well, because I can see that in a lot of ways, she is very similar to the way I am,
Hmm.
but as a mom.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
the same sort of mindset that I have, she has it in the same way, but as a mom. So, in terms of like, how can I make our home like the healthiest home? How can I make our food like the healthiest food? Like she wants to learn how to make things from scratch, which she's already made a lot of things. She started making a lot of things from scratch instead of us buying them.
Hmm.
Obviously, she's learning how to garden so that we can just start growing our own food so that we can be healthier. Cleaning products, like she makes soap now, just different things that I wouldn't really think of.
Hmm.
But when I see it, I'm like, I do appreciate it and I see the value in what she's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Hmm.
the beautiful thing about a partnership is like I focus on different things and she focuses on different things
Hmm.
and it helps us as a family just be healthier, happier as a family. So I think that that's the beautiful thing is like I do see all of the value and everything that she's trying to do as well.
Hmm.
And sometimes it does come into conflict because we are both trying to like do so much.
Yeah.
And it's like we only have so much money. So it's like, do we invest in this or do we invest in like healthier food or more stuff to grow for the garden or whatever it might be? So,
Hmm.
and in those situations, I'm just like, we're literally arguing because we're literally both just trying to do the best for our family,
Hmm.
but we only have so much time, money, and resources. So it's like we
Yeah.
have to pick and choose where we allocate those resources.
Hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, it's because we both just want the very best for our family.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just try to be better with like telling her, like, I appreciate that she's doing those things because it is sometimes easy to overlook. Like, hey,
Hmm.
it takes a lot of effort to make something from scratch, even if it's just something as simple as soap, but it's like, if it's
Yeah.
something that's not toxic, I mean, that's very mindful of her and it takes a lot of effort.
Hmm.
So it's very easy to sometimes overlook those things, but I'm trying to work on also seeing like, okay, where is she putting work in and value in that is again just making us healthier and happier that I can be recognizing because I know
Hmm.
she is constantly thinking of those things as well. So
Hmm.
it's almost like I have all these things in my head. I'm like, how can I learn more about real estate so we can invest? So I can eventually quit my job? How can I learn more about being healthier, whether it's physically or just eating healthier? And she's over there with the same thing, but she's thinking in very different terms. So I do think
Hmm.
sometimes we're both just caught up in that
Hmm.
and we tend to, yeah, we get stressed out and we may not know what each other is kind of going through, but
Hmm.
we just have all that pressure and expectation built up. And then if we're not communicating it, we're just like, well, we're both stressed out, but we don't really know what's going on. So I think obviously that's where communication is so important because then that's where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I see you're trying to do this. How can I help you? I'm trying to achieve this. How can you help me in that? And then that's
Hmm.
where you get aligned. And then that's where you can really start to like make some progress.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we always hear that, communication's key, communication in a relationship is very important, but like, are we really communicating? Are we really telling our partner, like, it bothers me when you do this, or hey, I don't want to hang out with you tonight. I just want to like decompress,
Yeah.
not because and not feel guilty about saying that. And, because that was a conversation that Aaron and I kind of had, like, I don't know, it was a while ago, but it was like even after therapy sessions and stuff, it just therapy really allowed us to understand how to communicate better. because that wasn't happening. And then
Hmm.
he tells me that he just feels like he needed more of his personal time, but that he felt guilty if we weren't going to spend time because I also always needed him with me. Like I always wanted to be spending time with him. And
Yeah.
then I had to learn also too, like, okay, well, I need my time too. And then when we did start to have like more of those like separated times, it was like, oh, this is nice. Like I realized, well, this is nice. Like I can do my nails now, or I can do this. And it was like I was just again programmed to be like, I just want to be next to him. I just want to be with him. You know,
Hmm.
maybe again stuff from childhood trauma or whatever, you know, had
Yeah.
to understand all that through therapy. But yeah, I mean, it's really being open and honest with each other and respectful of each other. And it's not always perfect because we're always, you know, Aaron and I are also we're also very similar in different ways. You know, like he is more like the right brain and I'm more the left, or maybe the opposite. He's more like logical and he's more like interested in numbers and things like that. Just similar to you in his own way. And then
Hmm.
I'm more like, don't talk to me about numbers, like talk to me about this. So, and he's very driven, I'm very driven. So, you know, similar to what you said about you and Monica. So we balance each other out well, but it's like definitely key that we communicate because if not, then we're stepping on our toes. And like you said, at the end of the day, like we're both literally trying to have the best situation for our families. Like we're both working hard
Hmm.
at it. Like why are we against each other, you know, for if we both are
Yeah.
working towards the same goal. But it can be hard,
Hmm.
and I think it's just part of marriage, you know, both people
Yeah.
really wanting to work at it and being open with each other. And I think just in any relationship, you know, even like us as siblings, you
Yeah.
know, we've had conversations where we have to be honest with each other
Yeah.
because we want to keep that relationship and we want it to be a healthy relationship. So yeah, it's just again, it's a lot of things that we're cycle breaking, you know, because we did not see those things growing up. But yeah, I think today's like conversation was really helpful. Yeah, I think it's awesome that we like shared and we're vulnerable and like I love how naturally all these things came up about therapy, childhood trauma and things like that. But and I think even if you're not a parent, like there's so many things here that you can like take away from as well too about like comparisons or how we feel in terms of like how our childhood trauma was or just things that happened in our childhood. Um so yeah, I think even just like talking about it and saying it out loud, I already feel better about how I've been feeling because I've been really stressed lately and just yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that actually. I'm like, this is kind of another form of therapy I feel for us
Yeah.
because when you're talking about it, you're kind of reflecting on like the things that you're saying and how you have been feeling. So I think it does help us as well, just kind of work through whatever we might be going through or what we're feeling. So
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully this is helpful for you guys and you guys can relate. Again, we would appreciate any feedback, leave comments, or just let us know what you guys think.
Mhm.
Or even if you want us to talk about certain topics, let us know as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye.